This episode of UK Low Carb Podcast is sponsored by Deliciously Guilt-Free. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, and welcome to UK Low Carb. I'm really honoured to have a series with my good friend, Dr. Jen Unwin.
Hi everyone, so pleased to be here. Yeah, we're hoping to tempt you all to come along, interest you to come along to the first International Food Addiction Conference on May the 20th in Bristol as part of the annual PHC Public Health Collaboration Conference. So yeah, we're going to be doing a series on food addiction, sugar addiction. We might have that debate about what to call it, and it's going to be great.
Excellent. So join in each week where Jen and I will be going through different topics to do with addiction, and at the end you get to ask your questions in a live Q&A as well. So without much further ado, let's get on with the show. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode in our great series on addiction, where Jen Unwin has come onto the show to talk all about all things to do with food addiction, and in particular because on the 20th of May she's got her first ever food addiction conference happening in Bristol, which is really exciting. And so we decided, let's get our heads together and let's plan for that and think, how could we try to get people thinking about addiction? Because I think it does affect many of us in the low carb keto world. So welcome back to the show again, Dr. Jen Unwin.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
And just by the way, people might not realize we're recording these all in one go. So if our voices are getting a little bit more hoarse and a bit cracked, especially Jen, who's doing, the lion's share of the work here, then that is why. So thank you for sticking with me and doing all these.
It's an absolute pleasure.
So far we've talked about the symptoms, we've talked about how do they work in us, we've looked at craved, and also we've looked at dose. And if you want to find out more about that, go back and listen to those two episodes. What are we talking about today then, Jen? Because I think you said something last week about getting a bit more into understanding the food itself.
Yeah, so let's talk about the food. It's our favorite topic. What is it good for food addicts to eat, and how do you kind of design your own recovery food plan? What sort of things should be in it, not in it, all those kinds of questions about when you should eat, blah blah blah. And that, we often just want someone to tell us what to do, don't we? So there'll be a little bit of that, but not too much, because really everybody's recovery looks a bit different. Everybody's food preferences are a little bit different, personal circumstances and tastes and so on. But there are some sort of general rules, and also just to say again, the book Fork in the Road that I wrote, Profits to the Public Health Collaboration, has got the food lists in, and it's also got advice from people like Bitten, Dave Avron Wolf, Georgia Eade. Some people may know that they will give their comments on the food in Fork in the Road. So go and have a look at that if people want more information after this podcast.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked last time, didn't we, about the importance of neurotransmitters in the brain. And do you remember I said that serotonin was made from tryptophan, which is an amino acid? Amino acids come from protein, and that although I'm not a nutritionist, I work with Heidi Yever, and obviously been in the low carb world for ages and talking to David, I've come to understand quite a lot about nutrition and the biochemistry of it, and obviously the brain and the biochemistry of it. So there are some absolutely essential proteins that we need for the brain, but also for the body. Obviously we're repairing our bodies and brains all the time. There's a fantastic fact, that so we all know, for example, a lot of us hear that blood cells live about 3 months, and that's why we only have an HbA1c, how sugary is your blood test. There's no point having it in less than 3 months, because you're going to replace your blood cells in 3 months. So that's one example of, obviously the body has to make new blood cells. The body also has to make new brain cells and new bone and new certain things take longer than others, but we need to build that up. So the brain needs these essential amino acids, and the brain also needs essential fatty acids, and that's for your hormones. But also the brain has a lot of cholesterol in it. So I think we all suffered from the low fat, eat low fat mantra that was around in the 70s and 80s, and I know it's the same. My parents were very keen on the whole low fat thing. But we need fats for our brains and hormones. I'm sure you've had other guests talk about that.
Well, can I just ask something quickly there, Jen? Because you said essential amino acids, essential, which is, I guess, essential protein, essential fatty acids as well. What about essential carbs? Because the way the food nutrition advice seems to work, you'd assume there'd be an essential carbohydrate we need as well.
Yeah, great point. And of course, we have zero need for carbohydrate and sugar in the
say that. That's incredible, because literally the food advice is eat, whole grains every day to be healthy. I remember getting so angry as a child. I was about 12 or something. And I remember seeing Ian Botham doing an advert for shredded wheat, and it always stayed with me until about a year ago. I looked it up on YouTube to see if I remembered it correctly or not, because over time I might have changed the memory. And he actually says this. He's recommending eating shredded wheat, which is, if you're outside the UK, a breakfast cereal. And he said, shredded wheat, if you eat it every day, it could lead to a healthier heart. I remember thinking at the time, could isn't good enough. Like, what do you mean? Anything could mean anything, really, if you say it that way. That's ridiculous. And that's how it's been advertised. There's no evidence to say you need this stuff because it is essential for your body. And yet it's told to us every day, eat it because it's good for your body. And there's no evidence. It's incredible.
Yeah, eat fibery, slow release carbohydrates. Have meals and snacks, all invented by the food industry. If we needed carbohydrate to live, we wouldn't be here, because our ancestors lived through the winter, often without such things. And the Eskimo, I mean, I give you the Eskimos, my lord. They don't eat any carbohydrates. There are certain cells in the body, in the eye and the brain. The brain does need a certain amount of glucose, but isn't the body marvelous? It makes the amount that you need out of those proteins and fats.
And even then, we're talking tiny amounts, aren't we? I mean, that's the thing. You're not saying you have to eat it to have enough. I mean, you literally make it from what you've got, like you just said. So, you're talking about a fraction of the amount that people are eating every day.
So in my blood at any one time, there's about a teaspoon of sugar. And when we, I mean, all this stuff blew my mind initially. When we know that there's 6 teaspoons of sugar in a banana, we know, where do the other 5 go? Insulin has to put those somewhere, and it puts it in your liver and your muscles. If you were running a marathon, you'd probably use it up. And in your belly fat. So so not necessary, but we do need, because we're building a new body and a brain all the time, we need to eat adequate proteins and fats. So that's the building blocks, if you like, and that's what we need. So I always try and think of that when I'm eating and having my meals. I think, what am I eating that I'm going to build my body and brain out of? So yesterday I had some lovely fatty lamb. And had a bit of cabbage on the side for entertainment. Today I'm having duck, lovely fatty duck. So fatty meat is great, because it gives us that. We were talking about so there's another factor, isn't there? When we eat sugar and carbohydrates, there isn't really an off switch, and evolutionarily that was good, that we didn't get the fullness hormones. I was getting them the wrong way around, whichever one it is, leptin or ghrelin. The one that makes us feel full, you don't really get that when you eat sugar and carbs. But when you eat fatty meats, you do. There's a kind of natural off switch, if you like. So that's another reason to eat them. Not just that we need them, but it helps us have that sort of fullness and satiety. Eggs, fish, meat of all varieties, seafood, all great. Animal proteins and animal fats. So I cook in duck fat, lard, tallow, all of those.
They cook beautifully as well, don't they? This is what I've learned. I used to fry in olive oil, which is dangerous, actually, isn't it? It becomes a trans fat, and it burns really easily. And yet, actually, now we just get these jars from the butcher with, I think, duck fat, and also with like beef dripping, and it cooks beautifully and gives a lovely flavor, and it doesn't burn either. It's kind of a much more versatile fat to use, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're kind of channeling our inner cave people by eating a very, so lots of people, maybe start with paleo, don't they, or keto or low carb. So and we're drawn to it, I think, because I think we know we need to leave out the sugars and the carbohydrates and the ultra processed foods. So make that the basis, and then some low carb vegetables if that's what you like. See what you can tolerate. There's some special notes for us. Let's sort of go through those in order. So special note number 1 is nuts. So nuts there's some rare foods in nature that have that sort of carbohydrate fat combo, and we like them. They're sort of winter things. They're fat storage things. Nuts were available in the autumn. If you can honestly have a handful of nuts and move on with your life, that's absolutely fine. I personally can't do that. So I personally have had to get to the point where I say, nuts aren't for me either. Very early on, I knew I couldn't have peanuts and peanut butter because I would just eat I would just keep going back to call me in the same way as chocolate, back to the cupboard. If I bought a jar, it was gone within about 2 days. Clearly, that's not normal behavior.
That's a sign. Somebody in my family has that, and it's really strange how I think other things are the same for me that they don't have. And when there's nuts out, because of my, some of my family are from the Middle East, and nuts are a big part of the culture, and I can see some members of the family who just devour the bowl, and then other people like me, I like them, but I don't really go crazy for them. I just have 1 or 2, and I don't think about nuts again. And yet I'm thinking, the bowl's getting empty here. What's happening? And I think to some people they can't help themselves, and I just think, well, I'm lucky I don't have that. But then there are other things that I'd probably be exactly the same with. So it's very unique to the person, isn't it?
Very individual to the person, and that's why I said there aren't these rules. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, we know which things are sort of drug foods and we crave, and we can't leave them alone if we see them. So for me it's nuts, for you it's not, Dan, so that's fine. Leave those as an option in your diet. Add them to salads or whatever you need to do. That's completely fine. So nuts is one, and obviously they're far more moreish if we roast them and salt them because then the absolute combo of deliciousness which the foods industry exploit is salty, sweet, carbohydrates and fats. So if you think like pizza, donuts, Pringles, all of those things, we know it's kind of holy trinity or of
not so holy.
So holy, hellish for us, hellish. So that's that. And then the second is kind of dairy, cheese, cream. And I do know a lot of people in the low carb community who struggle to moderate cheese and cream. We often get people at our food addiction groups who've done really well, but they say, listen, I'm absolutely have this problem with cream now that I just can't put it down. That is now my issue. So David he's fine with the cream and the yogurt. But I personally, again, if there's yogurt in the fridge, I'd keep going back. Cheese, I'm a devil with cheese.
Cheese is like that, I agree.
Not only if it's there was a cheese board there, would I keep cutting at it. I'd take little small slithers so no one thought I was greedy, but I would keep going. Not only that, but later on or the next day, it actually increases my cravings for other foods as well. It seems to actually increase my appetite. And a double cream does the same as well. So I've ended up black coffee. I've managed. This is me over many years, I have to say, so that people don't get too freaked out. And again, it's a completely individual thing. Some people are completely fine with dairy. Butter I can't have either. I can eat butter like cheese. I do have ghee, and I make my own and cook with that. But so that's my own unique story. Other people can have a bit of cheese on the dinner and it's fine. It doesn't kind of drive them crazy. So cheese.
Well, Tom Watson said that, didn't he, on your Clubhouse? I remember when he came on. It was about a year ago, and he said that being stuck in lockdown and the fridge being just around the corner from where he was working, he suddenly felt his cheese intake was going up and up and up and up. And he said, I can't remember what he said, but it's something like, a lot of us can give up biscuits and things and then realize we're eating cheese in the same way. It's the same behavior, just it changes to cheese, and you've got to be very careful of that.
And things change over time as well, and you can try. I think I used to be a bit better with cheese, but then it's sort of transferred over to cheese, and I think we have to be careful. Those of us with this addictive tendency, we can move seats on the Titanic, as they say, and that's the same. We know that people who give up smoking put on weight, and that's because they start eating sugar to get their dopamine hit. Or people who give up alcohol, the same. They tend to
yeah.
turn.
I've heard this from someone who used to go to AA, and they said, you go there and there'd be cake every single week. And she said to me, I'm really worried that people are just like swapping one thing for the other. And that's why she became very aware of sugar. So I think you're right. I think that's exactly what happens. These behaviors just move into the next food or the next addiction, but it's the same damaging behavior. Yeah.
It's a proven thing. That's this addiction interaction disorder. Yes. So we need to sort of eat super clean. So that also leads us on to, for those of us with food addiction, alcohol. Hello, it's a drug. So it acts on the same part of the brain. And again, this took me a while. I was never a big drinker really, but I started to realize that when I'd had a drink, the next day I'd be much, much hungrier. And there's all kinds of mechanisms that make that happen. But also a lot more cravings. It set off the sort of craving part of the brain as well. So again, everybody's individual, but for me personally, I've decided that on balance, I was better off without it. So I've quit alcohol in the last couple of years. So it's alcohol, caffeine. Again, completely individual. Some people are fine. For me, it did make cravings worse and headaches. So I've given up so many things over the years. I worked on that, and I now drink decaf. So that's another one just to be aware of. And then the last one is sweeteners. So it's all a bit like, people often say, well, it's keto or it's low carb. Yes, but there's this additional layer for those of us with this problem, and I think that's where some of us come unstuck. So we'd say peanut butter, oh, that's okay because it's okay because it's keto, but then you find yourself in the cupboard just kind of necking it, and then it's that behavior that's going to alert you to that being a problem. Sweeteners, they keep that sweet taste going. They do light up the reward center. They are going to make it much harder to kick this problem long term. So if you need to get on to sweeteners to get off sugar, that's completely understandable, and it's a bit like methadone is to heroin, if you like. You're moving in the right direction. It's a harm reduction, but be aware that to really get into any kind of solid recovery for those of us with these kind of definite food addiction problems, the sweeteners will have to go in the end. They will just keep the going. They will make it more likely. That's the same with alcohol. So alcohol and sweeteners, it's more likely that you would relapse at some point if you've still got those in your life. And I have to tell you, giving up sweeteners for me was as hard as sugar. Apart from sugar, it was the hardest thing that I did because I liked sugar-free gum and and that kind of chewy thing. I liked diet drinks because I thought they were okay.
You know what? This is exactly. I think this relates to all those foods. The nuts, a good example. For some people, if that's your trigger, you have to be aware of that. And even if a guide said, this food is a keto low carb food, it's irrelevant. It's about your relationship to it, and do you have an addictive? Yeah, and I think sweeteners are like that. Now, I'm not going to mention her name, but I know there's a friend of ours that we both know who has talked about this publicly. And she came to, the Deliciously Guilt-Free stand in Real Food Rocks. And she said, I realized I can't do that because that is a trigger. Even though it's low carb, it's not right for her. And I think that's where you should feel empowered to know what your triggers are and realize it doesn't matter if it's sugar or sweeteners. If you've got a problem, you've got a problem. So you shouldn't have it. And I think that's the right thing to do. And I think that conversation with yourself is just the most adult responsible thing you can do, because you shouldn't be having it because it will just trip you up. I find that with bread, actually, with me, sometimes with these low carb breads, I can find that I get into a bit of a thing of eating them and I enjoy eating them. But then it's a very quick slip for me to eat real bread, which is weird because you think, why would I do that? I've got this low carb equivalent. Because in my head, I'm almost like, well, it's just bread, isn't it? They're all the same. What's the difference? And it's ridiculous because it's my addiction coming through.
isn't that addiction talk so sneaky? So, Britt talks about this, there's red dog and blue dog. So the addiction part of your brain is a sneaky, cheating, plotting. It's going to be telling you, oh, it's bread.
I think you're going to swear at the end of that then, Jen.
Bread's all the same. Yeah, well, maybe, but bread's all the same. Or, just one slice won't hurt. Or, go on, it's your birthday. All of this kind of sneaky addiction stuff that goes on in our heads that we, again, this is more for the next episode, but it's how do we, keep that recovery going long term. So just back to the food. Yeah. So, I mean, we're really talking. So we've talked about the things that we should be eating. And again, these lists are in Fork in the Road, so people can look them up. Individually going to work out what you should be avoiding, because it makes you crazy. And it's a kind of, this is a lifelong journey. You're going to be sort of refining and working out what works for you, timing of meals, and so on, and how to sort of get yourself in a good place so that you feel peaceful around your food plan and the things you're eating. You've not got a dieting mentality. It's about being well. It's about building a body and brain. It's about eating that nutrient dense food, cutting out the things that people need to almost universally cut out are sugars, grains, and ultra processed foods.
Yeah,
for sure. Start with working on all of that, and then these nuances that will become clearer after that, and your brain it'll get easier because your brain is healing. You're feeling more yourself. Your memory will be better. You won't have this kind of brain fog, so it becomes easier to look after yourself and to make those right decisions. In the beginning, you're right in the food, and you've got the brain fog and the anxiety and the low mood, and it's just breaking. I think last time we sort of had that analogy of getting over the wall, trying to get over the wall to the other side so that the brain's clearing, and then you're more able to make these better decisions. And don't blame yourself, and find a community, find some support. So Heidi and I running weekends, running groups. There's the guys over in the States, Sugar X Global, that I would recommend. There's recommendations in Fork in the Road in the resource chapter at the end, or on the Public Health Collaboration website. We've got some pages. If you go to the resources, there's some food addiction pages there, and there's advice and tips of where people can connect to others. It's quite hard to do it on your own. It's nice to feel part of a community.
I think that's really important. I think the fellowship that you have with others is massive, isn't it? And I think identifying this in yourself is great, but also having people identify it in themselves and standing with you to say, look, we can do this together is so empowering. Actually, that's the other thing. You talk about, the essential survival of human beings. An essential part of being a human being is being in community. And it's not like an optional extra. We might need time by ourselves now and again. That's normal. But I mean, being part of a community is an essential part of being a human being, because it helps us support ourselves, and it gives us a chance to express how we're feeling and to sometimes bounce on ideas of somebody. Like, I'm learning a lot just by listening to you talking and reflecting on myself, and I'm sure listeners are as well. And I think that's what community can give to us. So I think if you can join that, it'd be great. I just want to say this then to everyone. If you would like to ask Jen Unwin a question yourself, then we do actually have a live recording at 8 p.m. on May the 10th, which is 10 days before the conference happens. And that episode will then be broadcast the week after. So if you want to jump onto a call and actually be part of one of these recordings and ask anything you like about addiction, you're more than welcome to join us. And also, I just want to remind everyone that I'm giving away 5 free tickets to go to the conference in Bristol on the 20th of May. So if you just want to leave a review for this show, UK Low Carb, I will pick the first 5 reviews that come in, as long as you then email me, Dan at UK Low Carb, with a screenshot to show you've done it. And then I will announce those on that live recording we do on the 10th of May. So you'll be finding out 10 days before the conference if you've got a free ticket to go or not. So they are safe. But Jen, it's been great these first 3 episodes. Really enjoyed them and learned so much. And just give us a little sneak peek as to what the penultimate episode will be next week.
Yeah, so next week we're going to talk about sort of beyond the food. How do we get these feel-good hormones in other ways? How do we kind of, organize ourselves, and, like you say, community, these sorts of issues that can keep us keep us in recovery from food addiction.
Fantastic. So there you go, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care for now. Bye-bye.